Welcome, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, to Speaking of Nerds. On this episode, we will be talking about the DCEU backing off of the cinematic universe idea and the repercussions that will have. We'll be talking about Disney stopping ABC from canceling Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the possibilities of the new Star Wars trailer, possibilities of what will happen in the next movie of Star Wars: The Last Jedi, different characters from The Walking Dead, discussing our favorites, and more on Speaking of Nerds.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the interwebs, for tuning in to this week's episode of Speaking of Nerds. I'm your host, your boy Brady, and by my side, he is the Spock to my Captain Kirk, at Mr. Adam.
I'm not a fan of that.
It's happening now. That's a new thing we're doing.
Please no.
Nope, it's a thing.
Why?
Because I said so, and I edit these videos.
Alright.
Therefore, I have say in all final changes.
True.
And that is a new thing that we're doing.
Not every week. But
every single week.
No. It's going to get old really fast.
And on on bonus episodes, we shall do it as well. Adam, what's our first topic?
First up, for business, we'll be talking about the DCEU. And turns out they may be backing out of the whole cinematic universe idea, which may have both good and bad effects on the movie franchise for DC. I guess to clarify what they're actually doing, more of what they're doing might be more of, that's a lot of more of, so to clarify what they're doing, they might be mainly just not having a lot of crossovers between the characters for the individual movies, like not having Batman show up in an Aquaman movie or Wonder Woman during Flash or whatever, but they'll probably still stick with most of the Justice League movies with crossovers within that.
Yeah. The biggest example I can think of is how in Thor Ragnarok, Hulk is going to have a significant presence in that, and DCEU has decided that they're not going to do things like that from now on. So you're not going to get Batman in an Aquaman movie, or you're not going to get Cyborg in the new Batman movie, or cases like that. The big crossovers are just going to be the big crossover movies. So the Justice League movies are the only time you're really going to see crossover. What do you think about that?
I'd say it's kind of good that they're talking about committing to something, because DC, I mean,
they talk about committing to something different each and every week.
Well, yeah, but DC, they haven't really approached this subject yet, and yet they've mentioned already that they're planning on doing a Joker movie that isn't going to be in the DC universe. And
still think that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Martin Scorsese, and I love Leonardo DiCaprio if he was to play the Joker, but I don't like it not being in the DCEU, because if you're trying to establish the shared universe and you're not gonna have this be part of that shared universe, I feel like that does more negatives than positives for the DCEU.
Which I think that may, in the long run, be one of the big problems of not doing a cinematic universe, is because really Superman and Batman, they've survived this long by doing several movies of them on their own, not having really any interaction with other heroes. But I think those two heroes are successful enough to do that, but they've mainly gotten into the extended universe world due to Marvel doing it. And
well, I mean, Wonder Woman also has had success, because,
yeah.
I mean, you haven't seen Wonder Woman yet, have you?
No.
Neither Batman nor Superman are in it, obviously.
Yeah.
So, they probably looked at that and said, well, this movie was probably our most successful definitely our most successful critically. One of the most, I don't think it was the most successful financially.
Close to it.
It was very successful financially.
I think it beat out most of the Christopher Nolan Batman movies.
Did it really?
Came close to it. I'm not sure.
I was going to say, those movies made a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
But it was financially successful for the amount of money they spent to make the movie, and it was critically successful based on the reception by the critics, because that's what critical reception is.
But one of the biggest complaints within the early movies of Marvel was that there wasn't enough crossover, because they did establish that they were doing a cinematic universe, and it just didn't seem a whole lot of sense, especially after.
Did they though? Did they really make sure that the people knew that, hey, we're doing a cinematic universe? Because I don't think they really
it was established.
made that clear until they had
it was
shown their plans for the Avengers.
It was established in Incredibles that Iron Man and Incredibles are in the same universe, and eventually that Thor was too.
The Incredibles?
It was established in Incredible Hulk that they were doing that, with the post-credit scene featuring Tony Stark, and the fact that they were putting in Thor into it later. But especially after Avengers had been released, there was some criticism in the standalone movies after that there wasn't a huge presence from the other members of the Avengers, and I think DC is going to get some backlash from that if they do stuff like that. Like by not having, especially if they've come out and said there's not going to be a whole lot of presence of other characters. It just doesn't seem like it's a good idea.
I think it is a good idea for DC to go this route, simply because Marvel, when they first started, the first basic movies, Iron Man, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, the First Avenger, and the Incredible Hulk, aside from post-credit scenes, didn't have much interaction between all the characters. And that was able to successfully set up their cinematic universe. Whereas DC decided, hey, we don't need to set up, we'll just go right into it and start competing with Marvel on this big multi-character expanded universe showdown. And they have shown that they can't really do that they need to establish these characters in their own standalone movies without having to rely on other characters. Like, for instance, Ant-Man in Marvel. Marvel did a pretty good job of taking this character that no one would have really known or cared about pre-movie, aside from, the nerds. No one really would have known or cared about him pre-movie, and now he's one of the Avengers. Or I guess he's not technically an Avenger. Is Captain America and them, are they still counted as Avengers even though they are fugitives from the law right now?
I think officially no, because
okay, who are the official Avengers then? Alright, I know Iron Man.
Currently we have
Iron Man, definitely.
We'll have everyone who is on Iron Man's side of it, which would be actually Black Panther wouldn't be, but we'd probably have Iron Man, potentially
War Machine.
Yeah, War Machine, Vision. So yeah, it would just be everyone on Iron Man's side minus Black Panther. So there really wouldn't be many.
So there's only 4 of them?
Which definitely explains why Tony Stark would be so eager to get Spider-Man, who was on his side, to become an official member of the Avengers.
So we only have 4 official Avengers members. The odds are looking good for Thanos now.
Yeah. Well, okay, I see what you're saying with this being a good idea, but I think it's too late for it to be a good idea. Because the reason, I totally agree that the reason why they're doing this is because they've realized that they can't compete quite as well with Marvel.
Plus, they looked at the success of Wonder Woman.
Yeah, but especially establishing the DC's equivalent of the Avengers so early on.
Which is the Justice League.
Yeah, but the fact that they're doing it so early on isn't a good idea, but it's just too late, I think, for it to be recoverable without it being just a back out and sort of almost a flop for the DC universe. Again.
Alright, speaking of things that are bad and unrecoverable, Disney had to put the brakes on stopping ABC from canceling Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Recently, ABC has gone into a love of canceling shows that people actually like on their channel, which now I'm about to get into a rant, so warning.
And it will have nothing to do with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so...
No, it's not. In fact, it's probably the least nerdy thing that we're going to talk about right now. But I am really annoyed Alright? One of my favorite shows on television was Last Man Standing.
Agreed.
Alright? It takes the sitcom genre, which is dominated by, a bunch of... Alright, I'm going to get into political stuff here. Just a warning. I know this isn't the show for it, but I'm going to do it anyway.
It most certainly is.
Alright. ABC canceled one of their top shows, Last Man Standing, simply because it was a conservative show instead of being one of their liberal shows.
Oh no, that's not why they did it. Because they didn't want it to compete with some of the other shows that weren't exactly on the same level at the time they were going to air the next season. That's why they did it.
Mm-hmm. No, they did it for two reasons, alright? At the end of the day, it was for two reasons. The first reason is it was not a show that they were producing. It was a show that Fox was producing. Because like I said, it's a show about conservatives. And the only company that's going to produce a show about conservatives is the only conservative network that exists, Fox. And trust me, alright? We're conservatives. We don't like Fox News either, alright? But it is the only option that we have here. Alright? We can't go to CNN. We can't go to NBC. We can't go to MSNBC. We can't go to CBS News. We can't go anywhere because everybody's a liberal in this world. And the only conservative option we have is Fox News. Alright? That's why I go to the internet and listen to Philip DeFranco, because I can actually get news that's not biased, in my opinion. And I'm sick of it.
You are getting so angry right now.
I'm getting so angry. Alright? And ABC canceled the show simply because it is a conservative show on their liberal network, even though it was their second most highest watched TV show on their network.
I'm honestly kind of surprised that Fox didn't buy back the rights to it. Because it was originally on Fox.
Yeah.
So I don't see why they just didn't bank off that success.
Why did ABC take it in the first place?
Alright, back to the original topic
I'm sorry, I went off into a rant there.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It is no surprise that Disney did stop them from canceling it, considering that is basically their last, their only fairly decent broadcast show after the huge failure of the Inhumans. I'm not sure where we're going with this, aside from mentioning that they kept it from being canceled.
I'm not going to lie, I just really put this in there so I could yell about ABC, because I really don't like ABC anymore.
I guess I can take this time to sort of rant about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Okay, if we're going to establish this on this show, ABC is code word for rant. If you ever hear us mentioning ABC and you don't want to hear a rant, then we'll put a little marker where you can go ahead and avoid that. My thoughts on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think, in theory, it was a good idea to have a show that, in a world of superheroes, that for the most part, the Marvel Universe revolves around powered people or enhanced people, and there is the presence of an entirely unpowered human agency. I think it makes sense to show the perspective of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. who are operating in a world of superheroes but don't have the same abilities, and for that idea it was really cool. I really liked the ending of the first season and first part of the second season with the crossovers with Winter Soldier and the whole Hydra versus Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It had a lot more of the actual secret agent feel of it, with two very undercover agencies fighting each other the whole time. It was kind of cool when they started bringing in the whole Inhuman tie-in with it, sort of bringing in how superpowers can affect the agency from within. But by the end of season 2, and certainly in season 3, it was nothing but mostly superpowered people, and it just really lost the feel of it. I'm continuing to watch it. I'm behind on my shows. I've barely gotten into season 4, which is on Netflix now, but I'm becoming less and less impressed with it, but I'll try and stick it out for a little longer. Alright, next up we have Star Wars News Net tweeted that a new trailer for Star Wars, probably The Last Jedi, I'm assuming.
I'd imagine.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was in the tweet that they said Last Jedi.
Okay, well, you didn't say that on the notes for the episode that we're reading right now.
I'm sorry.
All right. Well, they said that a new trailer was coming on October 9th. So we
Of
will...
2017.
That good clarification there.
This is important because Star Wars News Net is probably the most credible source for Star Wars information. And if it comes from there, then it is most likely true. I can't think of any stories that they've posted where it hasn't ended up becoming true. So, continuing on from that, what do you want to see in the new trailer, Adam?
Honestly, I have a bad feeling about this, to quote Star Wars. One of the good things with J.J. Abrams, kind of a reference to our second episode, one of the nice things about the episode 7 trailers was that it captured everyone's attention and interest in Star Wars, partially because it was the first Star Wars movie involving the original cast in 40 years. And he was able to do that without revealing too much of the storyline or any huge plots. And already we've gotten a huge plot twist with the first trailer, which wasn't necessarily bad. We've already seen several plot developments. And since it's not J.J. Abrams directing it, I can see people are going to want, especially after that last trailer, people are going to want a little more insight into possibly what Luke meant by it's time for the Jedi to end. And I'm just kind of afraid that the directors are going to be too focused on making sure that people are satisfied with that and reveal too much of the storyline. And so often that happens with trailers, Batman vs. Superman. And it can potentially lessen the hype when they're trying to hype it up even more. But honestly, what I want to see is maybe a little more of... This might sound a little hypocritical with revealing more of the plot, but I want to see a little bit of what they might do with Kylo Ren in this, because all we saw was a cool face scar, which we all knew he was already going to have. But I've kind of gotten the feeling that...
Is that a bad feeling?
No, this is actually a decent feeling. That they're going to do... Since episode 7 was almost a mirror of episode 4, I could see them tying in episode 8 with episode 5, and maybe having... They've already shown that they're going to be doing a little bit of the episode 5 feel of a Jedi training with Rey and Luke. But Snoke has already said that he wants to train Kylo Ren further, kind of doing a light versus dark parallel storylines of the two main Force using characters of the sequel trilogy. I can see them doing a potential like light and dark parallel storylines of the two main characters in the sequel trilogy that we know are Force users, and we know that they're going to have to fight each other again with a lightsaber duel.
Question: do you think there's any redemption in the cards for Kylo Ren after murdering not just his own father, but the beloved Han Solo? Spoiler alert.
Most definitely. The fact that, the whole point of Han going to see Kylo Ren, or Ben as he calls him, whether you buy into the theory of Han killing himself, which I do, more on that later, whether you believe that theory or not, the whole point of Han going to speak to Ben was to try and bring him back to the light, because he knows that there's a little bit of light in him. And especially if you buy into the theory of Han killing himself, there is still a little bit of that light in there. And if there's any shred of light in Kylo Ren, they're going to have to bring him back, like they did with Darth Vader. For those of you who don't know what theory I'm talking about with Han Solo, the theory is that Han did indeed kill himself when approaching Kylo Ren. When he does, on the platform there, Kylo Ren asks him if he can help him. He says he knows that he has something to do, but he doesn't know if he has the strength to do it. Han is obviously not naive enough to know that that is going to mean that he has to kill his father, which is Han Solo himself. And he also knows that if Kylo Ren doesn't kill Han Solo, then Snoke will just kill Kylo Ren. But if he does that, like his family, Kylo Ren's family, is basically the last thing that he could hold on to bring him back to the light side. And by the fact that Han does kill himself, there is still, like, the job is still technically done. Kylo Ren could twist the words around and say that Han Solo was killed by his own lightsaber, and therefore the deed is done. But there's still that shred of light that Kylo Ren still has in him, that he's not fully over to the dark side. But in that scene in Episode 7, when Han dies, Han grabs the middle of the lightsaber, and when it actually turns on, you can see Kylo Ren's face kind of become a little shocked, and then it goes to a shot of Kylo Ren's hands on the lightsaber, and he gets a firmer grasp on the lightsaber, indicating that he didn't have a firm grasp on it before. So once the lightsaber has actually gone through Han, Kylo Ren realizes, like, oh, this is what he's done, and he, in almost a surprised way, he says thank you, so realizing what he's done, but not entirely realizing the implications of what it's going to have on his moral dilemma, which they'll probably go into a little bit more later. Plus, I don't buy for a second that Rey is a Skywalker, and
she's a Kenobi, obviously.
Oh yeah. So the only young Skywalker we know of now is Kylo Ren, and I think it would be cool to eventually get Luke's lightsaber, Anakin and Luke's lightsaber, to Kylo Ren somehow, and he's not going to be able to use it for the light side of the Force unless he himself joins the light side.
What do I want from this upcoming trailer? Well, I like more Finn. I like Finn. He's probably my favorite character from the new batch that we got in The Force Awakens. So I would definitely like to see more of him. And I'd like to see more of Princess Leia, just for curiosity, wondering what they're going to do with her character in The Last Jedi. And speaking of what they're going to do with Princess Leia's character in The Last Jedi, that is our next topic. So, Adam, with the very sad news late December last year with the passing of the beloved Carrie Fisher, I think enough time has passed that we can start discussing what do you think they're going to do with her character, the iconic Princess Leia.
Enough time, like they were already releasing articles about the fact that she finished filming. Like I saw articles.
Oh yeah, they were releasing articles in January.
I saw an article saying that she had finished filming for Episode 8 like the day she died. Like that, guys, that's a little too soon.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like, yes, I think we can all, like, that was one of our first thoughts once we grasped that she was actually dead, but still. But yeah, definitely with Episode 8 coming out, we have to talk about the implications of her death on the Star Wars universe. And it was revealed that she was going to have a really big role in Episode 9. I honestly can't really, without really knowing much of the storyline for Episode 8, I really have no basis for what they're going to do for her, because she didn't really have a critical part in Episode 7. So, I don't know.
I look at it as they have three options here. They can go the sad route of killing off the character, which is the one I think they're least likely to do. They have the second option of the Paul Walker treatment, as I will refer to it from now on, where they can just edit her out. Her character is alive, but doesn't have a lot to do in the story. Or the third and final option is the most controversial option, is they CGI her, which a lot of people argue that the technology is not there, but if they were to lessen the role that she were to have in 8 and 9. We've seen that with Tarkin in Rogue One, and that they can do it to a certain extent. And so that is the third option, is that they just get someone who looks like her, CGI her, for a few scenes in the movies. Which one do you think is most likely, and which one do you want?
I can agree that they, especially with the success of reviving Peter Cushing and doing a young Carrie Fisher for Rogue One, I think it's a definite possibility that they might end up going with a CGI Leia. I think possibly Carrie Fisher's rough lifestyle may work to their advantage, because one of the hard things with this early use of the technology, and one of the reasons why Peter Cushing's character as Tarkin worked, was because he's not a very expressive character. And if you think back to the original trilogy, Leia was a rather expressive character, but in Episode 7, partly because she's very old and did live a very rough lifestyle.
So did Princess Leia, to be fair.
Well, I know, but I mean the character and the actress,
Yeah.
both, they're not terribly expressive in Episode 7. So I think that could, with that, I think that could work their advantage. They're not going to be able to do that with every character, because I mean, I've heard once Rogue One proved it could happen, there were talks of Heath Ledger, John Wayne bringing back different characters, different actors, and some work better than others. So I can see them doing that. But
I mean, they're obviously not going to be able to do that for every single movie and every single character, and especially not, Heath Ledger's Joker, because there's more that goes into that than just getting the face. You also have to get the voice. You also have to get into the personality and the mind of the Joker that he's gotten to. So that one's almost impossible of ever recreating. And the thing is, Star Wars, the only reason I think Star Wars can do it is because they're the only one that's done it before. Given, I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy did it to an extent by making Kurt Russell seem years younger in Guardians 2.
Yeah, well, they've been doing that for a while.
Yeah, but I mean, as actually, like, almost bringing someone back to, not almost, like, bringing their facial...
Yeah.
Bringing them back to life in a sense. Star Wars is the only one that's shown that they can do it, and they'll be on a higher budget, since this is one of the saga films, as opposed to a spinoff.
I think we can definitely eliminate the Paul Walker treatment, because...
Really? Is that the one that we're going to eliminate?
Yeah. I think even for Star Wars, you can't go from making a character a huge role in the next 2 episodes and then just suddenly just get rid of them. So I think it's a possibility they could kill her off. They could, I think, if they can tone her role down well enough for Episode 8 and then lead into a minimal role for Episode 9, they could potentially get by with the CGI, because any movies after that, they can just make it 10 or 20 years after. It's not inconceivable that Leia would die of old age at that point. They don't have to have a big, important death. But if they can't figure out a way to minimize her role, then they may just have to kill her off. That may screw up the storyline, but death isn't terribly convenient, as it has proven so many times, so maybe it's just going to have to affect the storyline itself.
My question is, would it be in poor taste almost to, put Carrie Fisher's face onto someone else through CGI? Because there were reports months ago that, the family was okay with it, then they weren't okay with it, Disney was going to do it, and then they weren't going to do it, and so I've heard reports about the CGI possibly happening, possibly not happening, so it's still up in the air whether they're going to do that or not, which is why it's included as a possibility, not a cold hard fact. But do you think it would be in poor taste for them to do that?
No, I don't think so at all, because even though, because they've already proven that bringing back dead people, for lack of a better term, has worked with Peter Cushing,
Yes, but he died years ago. She died a year ago.
Yeah.
Has enough time moved on for them to put her face, Carrie Fisher's face, on a different actress, and enough people to just be okay with that. Because I'm not sure that there has been enough time.
I think they may have to possibly have a mix between the Paul Walker treatment.
I mean, they're not going to do it in episode 8 because obviously she finished up all of her stuff for episode 8, so it would have to be in episode 9.
But they might have to do like a mix between the Paul Walker treatment and CGI.
Because that is actually what they did for Paul Walker's treatment. Was he got a little bit of CGI? They had brought his brother in to shoot a couple of scenes that he wasn't able to shoot because of his tragic death, and they did some CGI to make him look more like his brother.
I think potentially like enough time may not have passed to just make her CGI and act like nothing happened, because that could make it seem like it's like, oh, we're all very sad of an acting legend and a Star Wars legend has passed away, but we still have more Star Wars movies to make, so we just gotta CGI your face and move on with the story. That could definitely come off like that, but I think because even in Fast and Furious, they still made it, even in the movie, they made it a little more of a tribute to him within the storyline. And anyone watching it knows they put that in there specifically because Paul Walker's dead, so they could do the same thing for Leia. So I could see it more of a mix between Paul Walker and CGI.
Do you think there's any possibility of them, like I said, stuff's already done filming for episode 8, and like you said earlier, they had big plans for her in episode 9, so that means they wouldn't have killed her off in episode 8. So assuming that they still, well, not. Do you think that there would be a huge backlash if they were to kill off Princess Leia in 8 or in 9?
I really don't think so, because from among people that I've talked to who have mentioned what the repercussions will be of her death, the most common answer is they're going to have to kill her off somehow. So I haven't talked to a whole lot of people, but that has been the general consensus. But with Rogue One being out at that time, a lot of people were saying the same thing. So we weren't planning on this, but just kind of a more of a personal conversation. Where were you when you got the news that Carrie Fisher had died?
I was at home, and were you the one that texted me? Did you? Yeah, I think you texted me.
I think I did, yeah.
Yeah, you texted me, and you were just like, hey, Carrie Fisher's dead.
Yeah.
I think that's what happened, and then I just turned on the news, and I'm like, oh, okay, because
that's right.
It probably would have affected you a lot more than me, because I didn't get into the whole... I mean, I liked comic books and stuff. I liked Spider-Man and Batman since I can remember, but I didn't really get into like the nerdy stuff like Star Wars and deeper into the world of comics until I was at least 8 years old. And so, when I was a kid, obviously CGI I would have been more into CGI than I would have been into, the story and the stuff like that. And looking back on the original trilogy as a child, I didn't care for it too much, and I, as a child, liked the newer movies because they had better graphics and looked better visually than the older ones did. So therefore, I wasn't as connected to the character of Princess Leia until I became a teenager and started looking at the movies more critically than just visually. And so I imagine it's a lot different for you because you've been a Star Wars fan your whole life because your father was a huge Star Wars fan.
Yeah. This is probably the biggest celebrity death that had affected me, probably like since maybe like Alan Rickman, but this definitely was worse. But the big thing with this one was I already seen Rogue One at this point, but if I remember right, I think she died on December 27th, and I was visiting family for Christmas, and that day we watched episode 7, like literally that day. And like the whole, like most of all the nerds in the family were in the living room. We were watching episode 7, and literally we turned off the TV. We took the DVD out. We turned on the TV. First thing that was on was the news saying that Carrie Fisher was dead. Like we had just seen her in the movie, and then we find out she's dead, and then we had already had plans that we actually went to see Rogue One that night. It was very, very interesting. Like, it was weird because especially since everyone got kind of worried that weekend because she had gone to the hospital, but we had heard earlier that weekend that she was making recovery, but then all of a sudden.
I didn't hear that she had gone to the hospital. I didn't hear any of that stuff. I just got a text from him that said, "Hey, Carrie Fisher died," and it was really out of the blue for me. Yeah, it has probably been the most tragic celebrity death, I think, in years. I think probably maybe it's the most tragic one that I can think of. I mean, David Bowie made me sad because I'm a fan of David Bowie's music, but I mean, it didn't. I mean, I don't think any of them have hit me as hard as Carrie Fisher's did, and it probably hit you a lot more than it did me. Moving on to our final topic, and we're gonna start a new segment, I guess, at the beginning of every episode to take your responses to our fan question of the week. Shout out to Wub Strike for giving us the idea to start doing this. We're going to start asking a fan question at the end of every episode, and we will take your responses and we will read off the best responses at the beginning of every new episode. And our question for this week is, who is Supreme Leader Snoke? I think I speak for everyone in the world that Supreme Leader Snoke is obviously a shaved Wookiee. Tarful, to be exact, of the specific shaved Wookiee, the friend of Chewbacca from the battle on Kashyyyk. That is who Supreme Leader Snoke is. Who do you think Supreme Leader Snoke is?
Well, I think I speak for everyone else once they think about it for 2 seconds, that most likely, if it's going to be a character that we know, that it is Darth Plagueis. Make sure to comment below what your opinion is on who Supreme Leader Snoke is and why, or on Twitter and Facebook at Speaking of Nerds. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to Speaking of Nerds, and like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Tell your family, friends, and your enemies about this show.
And until next time, it's your boy Brady and my partner in crime, Mr. Adam, saying adios.
Amigos.